Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second live stream event of this week. It's our fall 2025 career kickoff. I'm J. Michael DeAngelis. I'm the senior associate director.
Don't let them forget it.
I'm the senior associate director of communications and technology here at Penn Career Services, and I'm joined by several of my colleagues. Starting to my right, Dustin Miller. Hey, Dustin.
Hey, Michael, how's it going? My name's Dustin Miller. I'm associate director here in the office working on the C's team. Really excited to get a chance to get behind the mic and put the headset back on. Looking forward to our conversation. I'll pass it over across the table to myself.
To yourself?
From myself.
So I'm Natty. I'm the senior associate director of the Wharton undergrad team here at Penn Career Services. Excited to be on the pod again as always. I co-host with Michael, and we're live streaming again since 2 days ago. So Welcome back, anyone who was there just a couple days ago, where we focused on recruiting. I'm sure there'll be some similar.
It'll
stuff
come
that
up.
comes
It'll come up.
It always comes up. But we have a lot of other fun stuff planned today, so really excited to do that. And Tina, you're last but not least.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Tina Anino. I am the associate director for the college team. Really excited to be here and excited for this conversation with us.
Well, it's great. So yesterday was, 2 days ago when we did our Navigating Recruiting at Penn. That was our first live stream from this new studio, because back in January, Career Services moved to a new building. We're here at 3935 Walnut Street.
Right above the
McDonald's. Right above the McDonald's.
It will inevitably be called the McDonald's building by everyone if it is.
I that's what I call it. And so I thought we could just start the conversation just by going around the table and saying what do we like about the new building? What's something that you're really excited about and excited for the students to see?
So I would say one of the things that the new building has that maybe our old space did not is a really conducive room or space for students to gather in larger numbers. I think that the second floor, which is where the studio is located as well, has a multi-purpose room, which I know there's been a lot of programs that the building has already used that space for. For those who don't know, it's not just Career Services in our building here. We also have some folks from Penn Global and ISSS. So we do have neighbors that are also optimizing the space, and we're excited to do programs. We've done, for those who might be familiar with Career Champions, we got a chance to use the space here on the second floor back in June. But just looking forward to the fall and having a chance to use that space. A lot of different room configurations for students to be able to engage in different ways with us. And I think the next time our office is using it is for training for our peer career advisors, which is coming up.
And then shortly after, we'll have a sophomore, what do we call it, career orientation.
Yeah.
It's going to be an extension of this. We might go like a little more in depth and give some exact examples, some things that maybe we don't get a chance to do today. But I think it'll be a lot of fun. And if anyone's a sophomore now who's joining, and you may have come to some, we didn't do a ton of workshops in McNeil anyway, because that room was not great last year.
Yeah,
in the fall. But this space is beautiful and nice light. Nice
I mean, having the windows is great. I mean, just
in the winter, that screen's going to be amazing because it's so big that it generates.
It's very toasty.
Yes.
It's very toasty.
So as for me, what's my favorite thing? I mean, the studio is hard not to put at the top of the list because, I mean, it's great to have things like this that we didn't have a chance to do before. Is really fun. I like also the ability to pop in and out of. I mean, at first I was a little skeptical of what have been called huddle rooms. It's not a language that we had used before. It was a little corporate sounding, but it is useful, I think, when a student comes in that I want to talk to really quickly, but it's easier just to go into a huddle room and talk really quick for like 10 or 15 minutes, especially for a drop in. The PCAs use this all the time. If you came and talked to a peer advisor back in the fall of last year, they were all in just one big open space before, which was nice in some ways, but sometimes if you wanted to have multiple conversations going on at the same time, it would get hard to hear. So I think this is an easier way to manage that. So really excited that they have a space that they can use as well.
I mean, I see students on a one-to-one basis much less than the three of you, but I took one appointment in a huddle room this spring, and I hated it so much. I don't think I'll ever do it again.
You'll never huddle again.
I'll never do it again.
Wait, why did you hate it?
So it might have been the particular room that I was in, but it felt incredibly awkward. The office that I typically use also does not have a good space to meet with the
Yeah.
student, which is why I took them
You
into the huddle
huddled.
room. But I thought it was very awkward. I thought we were too close together,
Okay.
and I didn't like the light. Everything about it was not conducive to conversation. From the furniture that was in there so maybe I just picked the wrong one. But because I would go into Dustin sitting in what we call the small conference room today. I would bring a student in there.
Yeah.
I think that's a better space.
Yeah, that's and that one gets better light. Some of those other ones
Yeah,
feel darker.
Yeah, it was very dark, and it was not like a bright sunny day too. So
if you happen to come talk to Michael about performing arts stuff, maybe hang out in the lobby. That'll be.
But I will take it upon myself to find the proper space. This is not on the students. This is not on the students.
I think I know what room you were actually in.
What about you, Tina? What do you like about the new space?
I would definitely say the windows. That is definitely a big plus. Knowing when it's raining outside or when it's dark in the fall. But besides that, I really like the huddle rooms. Not the one that you were in. I just have a feeling I know exactly which one you were in. But the first one is my favorite. I think that's 300F. Not that anyone else needed to know that, but I really like that room. So yeah, definitely to be able to have windows and have the lights, I think it's awesome.
Every student who's coming has been like, this is nice, and I live nearby. I was worried that we were going further away from the center of campus, but I think a lot of students actually live so close to here that it's still relatively convenient.
It was particularly good last year because they had moved so many first-year students to Gutman Hall across the street.
Mm-hmm.
Now with the quad slowly reopening, there's still a big population in the quad and in Hill, but with upperclassmen in the high rises and mixed groups of people in Gregory and of course all of the upperclassmen who live off campus on Pine and Spruce, there's plenty of foot traffic.
If you're in Gutman, just come right across the street. Although I met with a first year last year in the spring, and I knew they were in Gutman, but we were doing it virtually, and it felt funny.
They come right across the street.
We're so close, but hey, man, if it helps to just roll out of bed and meet, we also do so much virtually. That's good too.
Okay.
Heather wants you to talk into the mic more, Tina.
Yes, I actually just saw that. So thank you so much, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
I mean, and of course, as we mentioned, either before or after your career service appointment, you could pop downstairs for a fry or a Coke or
a milkshake,
6-piece nuggets,
McDouble,
free nuggets when the Phillies win.
Oh, the snack wrap.
They're back.
Yes, they are. Ranch.
You're the ranch. That's the kind you would get.
Yes, I am. Ranch.
And when the Eagles get a sack, so the Eagles season kicks off 2 weeks from today. Anytime the Eagles get a sack, the next day, free Big Mac with a purchase of at least $2.
So if you're not
McDonald's is in no way sponsoring or affiliated with this live stream. All right. Well, so we've talked about the office, the physical space, and we mentioned how great it is that there are huddle rooms. Well, maybe a 3-to-1 split on that one. But Natty, you brought up the fact that some of the main users of those huddle spaces are PCAs. Could tell us a little bit about that. What are PCAs? Who are they? Why should we take advantage of them? How can we make an appointment with them? What's the story?
So our peer career advisors, PCAs, are mostly upperclassmen. We have one sophomore, I believe, right now, but the rest are all juniors and seniors. They are people who we train specially. Dustin mentioned we're going to be doing training pretty soon with them. But we give them a lot of resources to help guide students through a lot of those initial questions that you might be having. They're really good, especially if you wanted to just look at a resume for the first time. They also are great if you just want to have almost like a mini networking thing built in where you're not sure of who to talk to, but you want to learn more about an experience that a junior or senior may have had previously. They're really good just to talk about what did you do last summer, or what kinds of things were you interested in? What types of stuff should I be doing here at Penn? So they're really great for opportunities like that. They have individual appointments set in Handshake starting probably next week. There are some that might have availability now, which is a good plug. If you want to have a first conversation as part of our training, we're going to be doing some extra appointments on Monday of next week. So if you wanted to come by and say hi and just get started and learn a little bit from our PCAs, there should be some appointments in there right now that are available. Anything to add? We are half of the PCA admin team here. Both Dustin and Tina joined me on that.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I've said a lot of times, especially in interviews when we're trying to talk to people who are looking to become new PCAs, it's one of my favorite parts of my job. And the reason is because we get to give students an opportunity. Something we hear a lot is they want to give back in some way to our office, to their peers. And so I think it's a great chance for them to get to know us a little bit more outside of just being advisors. So there are conversations I get to have with students that aren't just about their own things, but how can they help others as well. So I actually like training. I like the 2 days. We have a lot of fun. We have a great agenda. And ultimately, I think that the PCAs are sometimes the first face that a student might be interacting with our office for the first time.
And I'm going to throw – do you have the chat up? I'm going to throw it up because I want to ask a question relevant to PCAs. So we have a question. Are there PCAs for master's students? There aren't specific master's PCAs this year. However, we have a graduate assistant who is a Wharton MBA who is on that team and would be happy to meet with you. I can't remember that person's specific background. Do you remember offhand?
On the grad team?
Yeah, Diane's GA.
Not offhand, but I know that there's, I believe, some affiliation with, they're doing like some kind of a joint program. So I know they have a really diverse background to be able to contribute in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I remember thinking they came with a lot of different backgrounds in mind. I would check. We're just in the stage where because they're also current students in the MBA program, we're waiting for them to get through and get their schedules to be settled in the first couple weeks of school. So you'll probably start to see those appointments be available if you'd be interested in talking to the grad GA. Those appointments will also be in Handshake in a few weeks, probably.
Well, Natty, you mentioned that one of the main, well, not main, but maybe one of the most popular things that the PCAs do are quick resume reviews. And I know you've got a special treat for us involving resumes. Is it time to take us a little bit of a stroll down memory lane?
We can take a look. I thought it'd be fun, and I asked everyone in this room to be a little bit vulnerable. So I said, grab the oldest resume you can possibly find, and let's go through them. I think it'll be nice in a way to both see how even our resumes were not always the best, but also the ways in which we can improve, especially resumes that were back when we were in college or when we were first starting out in college, some of the common things that would help adjust that. So let me see. The first one up is unfortunately mine. Let me make sure I'm switching over. So, yeah, there I am. There's my full proper name.
Wow.
Anything stand out to people here?
Yeah.
I could walk you through my resume, but I'd be more interested to hear what people think.
It's a lot. There's a lot of blocks of text.
I get that sometimes, that I'm a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm familiar with your work past. So I see this as an accurate reflection of the things that you've done. From a format standpoint, it strikes me as kind of tough to read.
That immediately stood out to me too. It's like everything just blocks together.
Yeah.
So your eyes don't know where to rest. I think at most, if I were reading this now through my more experienced lens, I think I would pick out and see that my eyes rest on maybe the category section titles, which is fine. Like, that's not a bad thing. The titles of the places that I used to work, or the titles that these are also inconsistent, right? Like, this is the name of the band that I was helping work with. This is the title. I was a resident assistant for NYU.
Yes.
This is a category of different types of things related to web design. Every single one of these is completely
not
different.
Great.
A lot of inconsistency.
And then back to the title of the employer with Cole's Jam. Yeah. So that is definitely a red flag.
A red flag? I didn't think it'd be that bad.
However, looking specifically at your Trans-Siberian Orchestra experience, I think on the whole, you've done a good job here. You've picked some active verbs. You're very specific about the work that you did. You give good examples. It probably could be condensed.
I think all these just should have been bullet points.
Exactly.
Right?
I was about to say
exactly.
that, yeah.
And some of these are more generic, like if I had just actually
So
titled
if you
this
had
correctly,
yes, you could lose that whole line.
this whole
Yeah.
like I don't need it. I could have said Night Castle Management, like intern, and then I had another title with them at some point, and then have a description that's more about what I did, like the quarterly royalty statements and all that kind of stuff could be a lot more specific too.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that it took me way too long to identify what you actually were doing, or like who you were doing it for, and I'm also just not a fan of the apostrophe numbers for the year. I like to spell it out.
Yeah, for sure.
And I like to include a month as well, typically to showcase whatever that length of time might be. I always tell students we want to take out as much guesswork from our resumes as possible.
It's also another thing that's inconsistent because you type out 2012 as your graduation date, but everything else you shorten.
Yeah, so I'm calculating this. I would have been a senior. This resume must have been from senior year.
Yeah.
And I did not use the Wasserman Center for Career Development at NYU. I used their printer once. I think I printed this out a few times over there, and then I ran.
And then they banned you.
Yeah. No, I just wasn't as confident. I don't know. And maybe some people feel like that too. Like, we are happy to talk through these things. It's okay. Like, we're a good place to actually have these conversations. And at the time, I was like, well, I feel like I should be more actually ready to talk to someone.
Sure.
But like, we want to go
that's
through
why
these
yes,
and
that's
find
why
places
you
to
should
highlight
come in
things.
and talk it through. Yeah.
But I didn't have that confidence yet,
Don't
even as a senior.
be like Natty folks.
Yes. Anything else look fun in here?
I think also like knowing that recruiters take about 10 seconds to look at it. It takes me like 10 seconds to like figure out like
Agreed.
just your education section. So I feel like you're losing out on time. Like Justin said, something about guesswork. You don't really want to. If I have to guess too much, if I think too hard, we're gonna just go on to the next candidate.
Yeah.
The next thing is, I would definitely say just the format, like the the 2-column format. I think that could be really hard for AI. So to just
AI was just a twinkle in our eyes.
Use one of those good old 4 templates on our website. I think that would be easier. And then also I like to categorize my skills. I think your skills, like they all kind of ran on together. So I try to categorize mine.
Yeah, there's a lot in here. I mean, it's mostly technical stuff, but then there's some like music stuff. There's the speak and write Spanish, which no hablo. I don't know why I put that. I've taken something like 8+ years of Spanish through my life, and I assure you I was probably better at Spanish back then than I am now, but I never really could fluently speak it. So I think knowing what I know now, I probably shouldn't have even put that, because if someone in an interview just started speaking Spanish to me at this point,
you'd be in trouble.
I would have been in serious trouble.
And then what if they asked you to write something? It would have been even worse.
Escribir. That's to write in Spanish.
I've also never once seen you play a mandolin.
I do though.
I didn't know you were a Python guru.
A Python. Yeah, I mean, my minor was computer science, web programming, and applications. So I learned a little bit. I was better at the HTML, CSS stuff, which nobody even knows anymore.
Nope.
Right.
Like none of this is relevant really anymore. Python's still relevant.
I haven't written CSS in 15 years.
Yeah, Java and JavaScript are still relevant. And Python, like I took one class and learned the basics of it and could get by at the time, but I would feel very inadequate now to have to use that.
I received on-the-job CSS training here at CS.
Oh.
Wow.
Did you use Dreamweaver? Adobe Dreamweaver.
I still use Dreamweaver. So, yeah, in fact, it was long ago enough that it was actually Macromedia Dreamweaver before Adobe bought it. But yes, I use Dreamweaver. And in fact, there is still a very small portion of our website that I cannot manage anyway except through Dreamweaver. So I was just using it today, actually. Although I do not use cascading style sheets anymore.
There's just not how to use it. I mean, some of that is also, I think, when I wrote this, there are elements there that were more relevant in the time than
of course, yeah.
But I think it does speak to looking at, like, if I were to freshen this up for a new job, I would make sure like the things that I'm putting here are actually in a job description that I'm applying to,
yes,
and that match what I need to be showcasing,
and that you still have those strengths, right? If someone asked you today to write something in CSS, you'd probably be a little hesitant, right?
Color, colon, hash,
yeah, exactly.
hex code, something, semicolon,
exactly.
And another thing that I was thinking, I'm more of like a show not tell person. So like a lot of times on students' resumes, I'll see like a long list of all these things you're great at. Like for example, Zier says works well with people. I think it's better to talk about a time you collaborated, whether that was like cross the team, cross stakeholders. Just think it's better than saying like works well with people.
Yeah, and in particular, like this camp one, when I was a camp counselor, I just say worked. Like I really should have. That could have been an opportunity that maybe I do one that's communication focused. As a camp counselor, you're constantly communicating to people and trying to do it in an effective way. Sometimes in either stressful or not dangerous, but like situations that require like safety protocols. If I was trained to do the zip line and the rock wall, like people, if you said a response of what someone needed to do, they needed to listen to you to make sure they were safe as they were going up. So I could have highlighted communication in there some way rather than just saying really broadly worked and having my action verbs be a little bit more aligned.
Can I ask about chow-lenge activities? Is that a typo or?
Show me where.
In your camp experience,
The third line.
Group training challenge activities, but challenge has a hyphen.
You know, I bet you this at one point
was on another line.
And it spilled over, and that's what it did. The other thing is I remember using PowerPoint. PageMaker? No, not PageMaker.
Oh, Pages.
Adobe
PageMaker.
No, it's the new one. What's the new? Illustrator.
Oh, Illustrator.
I think I used Illustrator to make this.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. InDesign?
InDesign.
InDesign,
I used
yeah.
InDesign to make
InDesign,
this.
that makes more sense.
I used InDesign to make this, which I don't think was a great choice. I think for whatever reason I was more familiar with it at the time and felt like there was more things I could do stylistically.
Yeah.
You get a lot of students, Dustin, who are engineers who use something like LaTeX, right?
Yeah, all the time. A lot of the resumes, and then they'll show me on the back end, and they're actually coding to make changes to the lines. It's faster for a lot of them. They feel like it's quite efficient. They can make changes. I'm not any help when it comes to the coding part to be able to make the changes to the line. So I speak on the content, and then they on their own typically will make changes. But yeah, very common for them to be using that.
And I bring that up. There might be ways in which it's beneficial for you to use something else, especially like the LaTeX one makes sense because engineers already have that way of thinking about things that makes it much more easier for them to go through and format and think about it that way. There might be ways in which you're using a different platform that you think is going to stylistically make it stand out, but it's actually going to make it harder for you in some ways too. So I think it's finding that balance of like, what are you fluent in and what's going to get in your way.
Yeah. And what's going to get in your way is not submitting your documents as PDFs too, in general. Like a lot of these different systems are using, things that sometimes applicant tracking systems have difficulty picking up. So whether you're doing it in Word, Google Docs, LaTeX, if you're using InDesign, anything, just if you can export it as a PDF, that's going to be your best option to kind of protect the integrity of the document.
All right. Does anyone have anything nice to say about my resume?
I like your name.
Thank you. Why do you look so sheepish, Michael?
You made Dean's List. That's nice.
Oh, that
Thank
is
you.
nice.
Thank
Congratulations.
Thank you. I thought there was at least one element that I did a good job. I quantified something here. They participated still in like kind of a weak action verb, but I at least had like the number of students that are part of that size of the residence hall that I served. I think it was one of the largest first-year residence halls at NYU. So I mean, I did a good job of quantifying there. I did it here too for the kitchen crew when I was at camp.
Had I known you could prepare food for 200 people, I would have been asking for a lot more favors.
I liked working in the kitchen. That was a fun job.
Look, I'd hire you.
Thank you, Sina. Oh. I will also say this is not the resume that I used to get the job here. At some point, I learned more.
I would say I don't know what I'm hiring you for. Right? I think, like you said, this is a very broad, accurate, but very broad representation of your work experience. And so if I think if you were trying to hone in on something specific, this would be a good base resume to have, and then you could refine it based on what you were applying to and then pull the things out that are most relevant to the job. And I think that's a great way of thinking. I think it's always good to have that base resume that's got everything, and then you create a new document and you really refine it to target.
And knowing what I know now, so at that time in senior year, I was applying to mainly 2 to 3 categories of jobs. One was higher ed, because I was an RA, so I liked working in higher ed. I was applying to those jobs. I was applying to either music management types of jobs, and I was applying to like marketing media types of things. So I think and I have elements of that throughout here in a lot of different ways, but it's not organized. Like it's all in one place. Like knowing what I know now, I would have, instead of calling this work experience, I could have done something like media entertainment experience or music business related experience, and have the things that are specific into that field, like highlighting my work with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, maybe having elements of what I did from a media side on the web design piece, and then another section that's more just other related experience. It's a catch-all for the other things that don't fit in, and then maybe swap things around depending. Like for the higher ed stuff, I could really highlight the RA position instead and have it be like education or higher education experience. I could have phrased it that way.
All right. Well, who else wants to take a turn in the memory lane tumbler?
Dustin doesn't get a choice. He's the next tab over.
This is atrocious. I mean,
You graduated high school in 2015. Oh,
well,
That's when I graduated college.
it's true.
I was already working here for 10 years.
Well,
oh my God.
While you were doing that,
Oh my
I was slinging chicken at Chick-fil-A. Yeah, I mean, you could tear this thing apart in a lot of different ways. I think
this is a beaut.
yeah,
Dusty.
it's certainly not the thing that I would have applied to this job with. Just off the bat, I mean, the spacing is horrendous. You can't have text all over the place. It's incredibly inconsistent.
Yeah, even like the grades you have here, like
Yeah,
ninth
it's-
starts
oh,
here.
yeah.
10th
It's
starts
just
in an
it's
extra,
so bad.
ninth starts in right
And
here.
even your
I'm third of my
Chick-fil-A,
class.
you had two different positions. You got them on the same line.
Yep.
You've got
Yeah.
team leader all in caps and italic.
I
mean-
was so
I
proud.
mean, good on you.
You
boss.
are a leader.
of sorts. That was a great job for a lot of different reasons. It was awesome experience. It was the longest job I had prior, to a first quote unquote like full-time job.
Yeah, when is this from? So if you graduated in 2015, this was at least 2016 probably, right?
I worked at
Started at
Chick-fil-A halfway through college. I think it ended up being about 6 years. I think I
Yeah.
worked the winter of my sophomore year of college. I think it was my last winter, and then actually, you know what? I take that back. I worked in the summer because when I did the Fight and Fills internship, which is at the bottom there, that's the other thing with this resume, people. Like, my stuff's completely out of whack from a chronological perspective. You should always want to put within each category your content in reverse chronological order. But the Writing Fight and Fills was an internship I had to do for my minor, which was sports management. And I worked at Chick-fil-A and the Fight and Fills both in the same summer, mostly because Chick-fil-A was paying me more than what I was getting at the Reading. I think the Reading Fight and Fills was paying me minimum wage. It was like $7.25 an hour to do the internship, and Chick-fil-A as a team leader, I'd worked my way up to probably about like $10.50, maybe even
So
$11.
let me ask you about this long underscore before game day intern.
Yeah, what is that?
I got nothing.
Mm.
I honestly I can't even. The
highlight.
only thing I can think is it looks like it's almost part of if I instead of using a line.
Yeah, I think it was some kind of formatting
I
thing
think
like
I
that.
was hitting, shift and then next to the 0 on your keyboard, making the line itself, and I think I did that probably and was trying to move stuff around. But no, the line should not be there. It obviously doesn't add anything. That was a cool internship. I ran as a giant vegetable in the mascot race. I was always broccoli. That was one of my.
Say which
Yeah.
veggie.
I was always broccoli, and there was a disadvantage to the broccoli suit because it was
The aerodynamics are terrible.
it was skirted, and because it was skirted, people felt like you wouldn't be able to get as much knee drive when it came to running the race. We'd ran all the way from right field down past home plate up third baseline. It was a really far run. It was a great internship, but yeah. So I worked at Chick-fil-A probably until I think like that summer.
Just you talking about it, you talk about Chick-fil-A like it was a really great experience, but I'm sure it was. But looking at this,
There's nothing.
all
yeah.
I see is Chick-fil-A. I don't really
Yeah.
team leader. Like maybe has some element of. I'm sure there was something involved in
context.
like either the continuity or your reliability helped you get to that position. But otherwise, like there's not a lot of context.
And
Yeah, like
also, I
Hannah
mean, again, just in terms of consistency, your first one, everything's on a line. You've got parentheses around when you were working there, which you don't on the other ones. You also have your job title in a parentheses on that one. instead of having it on the first or second line, because you do that. So McDaniel College admissions ambassador. So McDaniel College, the employer, admissions ambassador, the job title, sharing a line there. But team member for Chick-fil-A
It's so
under this is a little all over the place.
And a question,
No additional skills, and really, as we said, you don't get into what you actually did. I mean, I have to say, Dustin, and you know I love you, but for a one-page resume, this has remarkably little information.
And now give me
on
some
it.
credit. Give a scroll, Natty.
Oh!
Look at those hobbies.
Oh no!
Wow.
Oh, Dustin.
yeah. So Dustin was like, I really need to fill the space. Every line, a new thing.
I had no idea we were going to the second page.
Oh, it's a real shocker, folks.
No pickleball yet.
This
Wow.
was pre-pickleball era. I would say most of those things are still true. I haven't kayaked in a long time. I love kayaking though.
When was the last time you dived or dove?
Right now.
Probably 4 or 5 summers ago.
We're witnessing
yeah.
it in real time.
Yeah, in real time. It's been a while. I thought because I could do like the same trick on the diving board that I could put myself as diving. It was like in a pool diving, not like
Yeah.
scuba diving.
I mean, that's
Like off a diving board.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's correct. You would put scuba diving.
Yeah.
For scuba diving.
Yeah.
Diving is
So yeah, I mean,
Board
this is
diving.
it's bad. I don't know. I have like additional accomplishments with grades and GPA. Like all that should live in the education
Hey, you
section.
made the dean's list. Congratulations.
Every-
See?
every-
2 for 2.
Every semester I was in college.
I just
Oh,
had the
wow.
one.
Just made my last one.
You know,
Yeah.
can't relate.
8 of 8.
I think a relevant thing that stands out for what a lot of Penn students bring, especially in their first year, is a mix of one, do I just list everything, and even if it's 2 pages, and that transition between like having these big lists that take up a ton of space versus making sure the space that you're using is used for really descriptive details about what you did. So I think ideally cutting things down to not be so vertical here and instead having like bullet points for
Oh,
Chick-fil-A that better highlight things. I think also we get questions of like, is it worth it me having my food service industry position or my retail job in? And I think the answer is almost always like, one, how does it fit in the story you're telling? 2, what types of skills are you going to be able to highlight that way? And 3, like, what are you going to fill the space with when you remove it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think when you're coming to college at first, use like everything from high school is totally fine. If it's a service industry job
Work
like this,
experience is work experience.
And-
I'm certain when I applied, so I had 3 jobs out of college before I started working at Penn. 2 of the 3 were essentially retail jobs, right? Even though in one of them I did have a managerial role, it was still just a retail job.
No.
And at my most recent job before I worked at Penn was just working retail, just selling videos at the Suncoast Video. So they were recent and relevant. And so, you know, to Natty's point, you have to show the relevancy, right? You talk about the things you've done.
yeah,
You
like
don't
highlight the
don't
skills
just
that make it
list
relevant.
that I worked at Chick-fil-A and I was a
Right.
team member.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Right.
tell me enough about what you did.
Because sometimes face value doesn't necessarily feel relevant, but if Dustin had put like all the valuable skills from maybe it's related to managing the cash register and the financial transactions for the business, if it's the customer service and communication element, if it's the managing the team, like actually making sure that the whole team is operating smoothly for the day and helping serve customers, like those are all things that might be relevant for other things that he could have been applying to at that time. And also, I think athletics stands out to me too. We have a lot of athletes at Penn, and sometimes there gets to the point where it's hard to fit stuff into your resume when you're keeping it to one page. So you might have a section that is under education that just says like football team member in the years, and you just have it more condensed across the page. But a lot of times you dedicate a lot of time, and there are a lot of valuable skills that are part of being a part of athletics. And so you could add bullet points to these too. Talk about the different communication, the things that you learned. You have to absorb new strategic play calling for whatever. Like you can really hone in and make it descriptive there in a way that'll stand out. Because it is a good assessment of like the skills that you had and dedicated a lot of time towards.
And he did it for all 4 years, so it's very possible he had some type of leadership. So whether that was the captain, co-captain, something in that nature, which would be important to add to, you know, show that your leadership and growth.
Yeah, I mean, I think the scariest part of this whole thing is this resume is when I was in college. So I'm sorry, McDaniel. I think the only time I visited the Career Services office or the Center for Experience and Opportunity was when I had a class assignment. And I tell that story a lot because, some people are maybe a little hesitant to come into the office, or maybe they're embarrassed about the resume. If I show this resume, I mean, obviously I've learned a lot. You don't know what you don't know. And so I think it's important to be able to come. We have expertise in a lot of different areas, resume certainly being one of them. If I'm correct, it is our most popular appointment type, far and away.
For sure.
And so please allow us to come help you. Tina mentioned the templates on the website earlier too. They're extremely helpful. If you don't know where to start there. Do not start with something like this. We can help you out though.
And I'm noticing a trend. So Dustin says he didn't really use the Career Center on McDaniel's. Natty already said he didn't use. Tina, did you use your Career Center?
Absolutely not. I couldn't even tell you where it was.
And I have to admit, I did not use I can only remember going in there once to drop, and I didn't even have my resume reviewed. I just dropped off a resume because Disney was doing a resume collection on my campus, and I just handed. And at the time, there was I think it was only a 2-person staff, and they had literally like a tiny little closet of an office. And I think I dropped off my resume at the front desk, and that was the most I ever did. Muhlenberg now has a beautiful Career Center, and very more visible on campus too. So I might, if I were a student now, I might be more engaged with it. But also I thought, how are they going to help me? I'm going to be, well, that's a spoiler alert. We're not up to me. We're not up to me yet.
You're going to be a star.
We're not up to me yet. But I think it might be time to look at, do we have Tina?
Yeah, let's move
next?
over to Tina. The last thing I wanted to say about this is just these service industry jobs and athletics are two things that can sometimes feel hard to fit in. But I hear from employers not like pretty often, but maybe even as often as just like the last time we were at our conference recently over the summer. But how sometimes recruiters look at it as like, have you had a real job before? And sometimes these can stand out as like, how to put the sweat and the work in, whether that's from an athletic perspective or just like actually meet clients and talk to clients in a more like retail high stress situation. Sometimes of people want their chicken and they want it now.
we don't have enough time. But,
a lot of horror stories.
But yes.
All right, let's move over to
Tina.
Screaming in walk-in freezers.
All right.
Tina's putting
this is a good resume. Yeah, what?
Already, I'm like tired.
I was like, I thought this was the template.
So definitely more detail. I mean, the first thing I would definitely say is bullet points. Oh, first,
also an
candidate
RA?
4. Yes, I was my senior year. So first thing is like candidate 4, because at the time I did not have a bachelor's degree yet.
Okay. In your education section, you would add candidate 4. Yes.
Right. I should have added that. And then some awkward like little spaces, like work experience. I personally, and this is just like a stylistic thing, I'm not a fan of work experience. I mean professional experience, or if you could target it a little bit more,
sure.
Higher education experience or something in that nature. But definitely I need a lot more detail, create educational programs for 50 students. I always start with just like, what did you do? And then we could talk about impact.
The bullets are a little sparse and it's a little vague. Motivated students. Well, how did you motivate students?
I was going to say, like, this one alone is already, but it's like 50% or like 75% of the way there. It has a clear action, created the programs. Like, that's a very obvious action. You've quantified it, so you show some of the context.
Those
and
are
something I really like about Tina's resume that I always encourage students to do is that, so you've got a relatively short work experience section. It's just 2 things, which is completely understandable for where you were in your life. But then you've put leadership experience, and that puts it sort of on the same level as work experience. So you're not just listing, these were the clubs I'm involved with. These are the experiences and skills that I'm bringing to the table through those experiences. So again, you could maybe get a little more specific in the text of the bullet points, but I think it's a really great way to highlight your extracurricular involvement, which of course is a huge thing on Penn's campus, right?
And for the bullet points, I think really the common thing that's missing is the impact, or like why was that important? Like here you can say create educational programs for 50 students. What did it lead to, or what was the goal? Was it related to a particular campaign? Was it to build community among the students? Was it like why did you do it? Could be a way that you think about it. Or what were some examples of the types of educational programs that you gave here? Those are some things that stand out to me and things that we'll usually ask to generate some ideas for how to keep being more descriptive.
Also have a little inconsistency in the dates. For the NAACP, the historian, there's not a space between August.
Yep, that's just a little typo there.
A little
Yeah.
small little thing.
Yeah.
Hey, but you know what? Like sometimes those small things add up in different ways, right? So a resume, Tina mentioned earlier, maybe gets about 10 seconds when it's reviewed.
Mhm.
This is your first impression in some
Yeah.
cases with, employers. And so we want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward. The resume does have to do some of the talking for us before we get into the interview room and can speak for ourselves. So
Inconsistent use of spaces with
Yeah.
your dashes in general. Sometimes there's no space at
Mhm.
all. Sometimes there's space on one end.
yeah.
Right.
So little things like that we would tell you to clean up.
I gotta
And
move
then
my mic closer.
and then I would say this resume you could highlight skills better, I think.
And I have a skill section as well. I don't think I have one of those.
Yeah, there wasn't one.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. What's going on?
It's great, but I would say generally speaking, you put the boys to shame.
Yeah, we're
Not even close.
Yeah,
This is great.
Yeah. And now we have the real overachiever here.
Well, so all right. So as we already as we already established,
You're a star.
I'm old,
Oh,
right? So
No judgments.
while you guys were graduating college, I was already working here for possibly over a decade. So my post-college resume is probably on a floppy disk somewhere. It did not exist anywhere.
I remember the floppy.
I'm
I
not sure
I don't know
all
if I
listeners
remember
will
the
know what a
floppy
floppy
disk.
is.
Shut your mouth.
I used to have a
Shut your
history
mouth.
teacher who would say, "I remember the chamber pot." I don't know
Floppy
why.
disk.
Does he?
I didn't think so, but he kept saying it.
So I could not find a resume from when I was graduating college or when I applied to my first position at Penn. But what I did find, and even these are
Oh, the suspense is
these are still
I got you.
relatively recent. But I had intentions and have a sort of outside my professional career, have a second career in entertainment. And so I have here my acting resume as well as my playwriting resume. Let's start with the acting resume because this is a pretty I told Natty I didn't have anything, but I found my acting resume. He's like, no, bring that along. It'll be interesting to show that there are different kinds of resumes and that there isn't necessarily a one size fits
As
all.
much as we've been talking about, like, this is what your resume should look like, there are times where it's okay for your resume to look different, and maybe that's because the industry demands it. It's an industry that just is used to seeing things differently, or maybe in your use case, it's easier to showcase the thing that needs to be showcased in a slightly different format.
Exactly. So when you're doing an acting resume, typically it's going to be printed or attached to your headshot. It'll be on the back of your headshot. You're going to bring that with you to an audition, or you're going to submit it to a casting director, or you're going to submit it to a producer or somebody who's putting on a show or putting together a movie. And so you're going to be listing the shows that you've been in, whether they're stage or film or television, and typically where you did them and who was involved and what roles you played. I've mostly done stage work, so these are all stage productions, and then I broke them out basically by the level of professional level, right? So off Broadway in New York, Philadelphia, and other regional professional theater jobs that I've done, and then stuff I did at university, both here at Penn, because I did a lot of shows as a staff member, but also then when I was at college. I have to say there was one thing that jumped out at me that I went, I wasn't in that. I don't remember. But I had to really think. So I did some study abroad at Goldsmiths, University of London, which I actually know is a place that a lot of Penn students also do study abroad. So if you go to Goldsmiths, hit me up. And so this play, The Blue Room, I was like, I don't remember, but we had an acting class, and the final for the class was putting on a short play. And so it was just me. It was only a 2-person play. And so I just was thinking about a scene work, but I had to really remember that we actually did this play as the final. I really had forgotten about
Another
it.
thing that stands out to me is you have a like portfolio profile kind of thing here, which I checked and the link was broken previously. Did you fix it?
I have not fixed it yet. No.
But I think that's relevant to a lot of students who might be, whether that's on the creative side, like what we're looking at here, if it's the arts or design, or if it's engineering. We have lots of engineers who have really specific projects that they've worked on, and it's a nice way to be able to showcase their skills in action. So I don't think either of us had. I could have easily, right, for mine, I have stuff related to web design. I could have linked to these somewhere, sort of portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
I could have linked to my YouTube channel where I have music and stuff, and I was applying to things that were music relevant, but I missed that. But you have a good example of including something like that here.
Yep. You know, something, and I remember when I was putting this together. So there are at least 2 pieces on here that I was also the author of, in addition to writing. I'm sorry, in addition to performing in them. And I actually don't have that notated. And I remember thinking, should I note that? And I don't remember exactly why I was updating my acting resume at the time. I guess I was going on an audition. But I thought at the time, you know what, that's not relevant to who I'm submitting this to.
Yeah.
So it's the same sort of thing. Whereas if I were applying for a broader job in theater, or I was applying for something that was going to be developed collaboratively, the actors were going to contribute, I would absolutely make a bigger deal that I was the author of some of these plays. Now I do have,
It shows up down here a
it
little.
does show up there. So I have my skills section, and again, all of this stuff is very standard on an acting resume. Something that is different than a traditional resume is that your education stuff always goes at the bottom, because they really want your credits first. And then you're training your special skills. And then I added a section for my writing because I did want people to know that that was the case.
Yeah. And this comes up a lot too when you become an alum and you're out of school. A lot of times you'll move your education to the bottom because it's less of this is who I am right now.
Exactly.
So it's really common to move that down. Going back to the engineering side of things, like that, the example for engineers is usually the skills go right to the top.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's kind of the reverse of what all of us have had when we had skills sections. We all had it at the bottom. But our engineering students or people applying to tech roles in general, will usually want to showcase that right at the top. Do you want to move over to the writing one?
Before we move
Okay,
over,
go.
there is one major production missing from this
That's
list.
true.
Well, remember, this is an old resume.
I know.
Well,
But if you were to update it
yes,
today,
what would I add?
King of Prussia.
Yes, no, I would. So my colleagues were very kind. They recently came to see me in a stage production of my podcast, the stage version of my podcast, Mission Rejected, which I wrote and acted in. So that would actually go right at the top of my regional thing. The only other thing I'd say about this, because I've had students ask me, occasionally you will want to list the director of the piece. Even more so in film. I've seen that. But if I had worked with someone really notable, you would absolutely put that. Or if it's someone, maybe if in my regional credits, I might list the director, because regional directors also move around, right? So you could say, on one hand, oh, they worked with someone who's quite notable, so that's great. He's inch a little closer to Natty Tina.
Oh,
Is what
I'm
is
sorry.
the signal he's giving you.
Sorry, I wasn't
But
reading
also
between the lines.
it's a piece of networking, right? Because they see, oh, Michael was in a thing that Natty directed. I worked with Natty, and I could call up Natty and say, hey, well, how was Michael to work with? Oh, he was great, or no, it's terrible. Yeah, it's part of that. So occasionally finding space. You don't have to do it all the time, but it can be helpful.
And that kind of reminds me too of we have a lot of students who do research.
Yep.
And it reminds me, like a lot of times in research, you'll put like who was the PI on in the lab.
Same kind of idea.
But in a way, like when you're translating that later for a more corporate position, a lot of times the names of those people are not relevant. Like if you're applying to a business analyst role and you had a lab experience before that they don't know at all,
right?
Maybe it's not as worth it. But within research,
it would be absolutely
that would
worth
be like
it.
the norm to do. So little differences depending.
So then if you switch over to my writing resume, this is interesting because I remember why I had to put this together. I was submitting a piece that I wrote to a playwriting contest for a grant, actually. and they said, please include your playwriting resume. And I asked around, and I asked a lot of my playwright friends, and I asked my publisher, and they all went, I don't know what that looks like. So I looked around. I utilized some of the examples that we have on our grad student page where you talk about publications.
This feels like research too, because it's like a publication, it's like a CV style.
Exactly. So I kind of lifted from a publication section of a CV, and I put down, I broke everything into 2 sections. So right at the top, I have a collection of plays called X and Happens that's been published, and then Drop's been published separately. And then these are plays that I've written that have been produced. So I put down where and when they got produced, and then a list of everything that I've written, whether it's been produced or not, and some awards. So
yeah, this is kind of like a hybrid between some of the other ones. Like your one that was more, here's the specifics, but then also a little bit of extra detail for some of these too.
I think this was worth noting. Again, because sometimes people ask you for things and you don't have a really good point of reference for it. And so you can just kind of make the best of it. So, yeah, I think if you asked most playwrights, I think most writers in general, and said, what's your writing resume? They would be like, a list of my books, you know? So, but I think using examples from other areas and then adapting them is useful. But on the other hand, I didn't get the grant, so I don't know if my resume had anything to do with that or not.
But it comes up in research all the time, because so many of our students will do research in their first or their second year. And in the research field, they'll always ask for, can I have your CV? And a lot of times students are like, well, I don't have a CV. What do I do? And so it's thinking about, where are the places where I do it, adapt it to be more specific to research or the field that I'm applying to? I think most of the time for students, you can usually just use your resume.
Yeah.
But I think your example is a good point of like, let me do some research and try to see, are there other examples of what people in this field have done and what are ways I can show it that might be different, that meets what the person I'm applying or giving this to is asking for.
And I think also, like, we know that there's differences as people in like career development, but a lot of other people, they just use them very much so interchangeably. So sometimes
That's true.
But we're like, wait, which one?
All right. Well, that was a horrifying trip down memory lane.
I didn't like
resumes.
that.
We started with
That was a great activity.
a horror of mine, and then
Got way worse with mine. Mine has to be the worst one on there.
So what do we have next, Michael?
That's a great question. It's again, we're gonna stay in sort of the do as we say, not as we did, because we're gonna talk a little bit now about career mistakes. And this is something we've covered on the podcast a couple of times. Typically around Halloween, we've done career horror stories. But it's something that I think we do talk with students about, where they're really concerned that they made this terrible mistake. It's going to be this horrible stain on their career forever. And I think we're all here to say, no, you move on, you get over it, and what can you learn from it? So
as soon as you can mitigate what that mistake was.
Absolutely, and maybe even turn it into a win.
Yeah.
So does anyone feel like kicking us off with a career mistake that they made?
You ever made a mistake, Tina? Tina's like, no, never.
Tina's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Well, if you thought the resume was bad,
Again, I need to move it closer.
if you thought the resume was bad, the career mistake is a lot worse.
I hope this is better.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Dustin almost killed somebody,
Oh, wow.
Well, that's not exactly true.
but it's a good hook.
It is a good hook.
Clickbait.
Could have been true. So I was between my junior and senior year of college. I was interning at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and they had a management trainee internship program, and it was supposed to be really great. Again, people skills, customer service, stuff I was really good at, and things I think I am still good at today. And there was something at Enterprise called DNR. D as in dog.
Do not resuscitate.
It's the first thing I thought about.
So in the enterprise world, it stands for do not rent. And this can mean to a customer, or this can mean about a specific vehicle in particular. And so
It's like the no-fly list.
exactly like that. And that job was really difficult for me, challenging for a lot of different reasons. But the panic that you feel as you have a line of people staring you down, looking for a car, and I just think of Seinfeld every time. But I had a reservation, and that's kind of what this job honestly was, if you broke it down to its smallest pieces. And I, in a panic, rented out a Chrysler 300, and I was satisfied. The customer was satisfied. Got on the road. I was feeling great about myself. And then we get a memo in our email about Chrysler 300s having a recall, like a factory recall. And there was a chance that the car could malfunction, catch on fire, explode.
Wait, did you know this yet, or are you just joking that he almost killed someone?
We talked about
Oh,
it
okay.
earlier.
And
I was that man.
and I turned around to the assistant branch manager at the time, and I said, we'll say Bob. I said, "Hey, Bob, I rented that Chrysler 300, and I saw his soul leave his body."
But the memo came out after you had already done it? Or
No,
was it sitting there and you just had
no,
to see
it was sitting there.
Okay.
And again, in the panic, when the car came up, it had DNR, and the assistant manager was like, "Dustin, like, just rent the car. And so I rented the car, ignoring the DNR. And when I told him that, he was like, "You get them on the phone. You get them back here now. Don't tell them why they need to return." So the customer did return. We got them out of the car. They didn't know why we were getting them out of the car, and they got into something that was much safer. But that was a huge mistake because obviously there was a lot of factors at play, including people's safety in general too. But I was learning. It was an internship. I certainly did not go back to Enterprise after, but it was a mistake that I made, and it was fixed to a degree. A lot of things can be fixed.
Mistakes will happen, but yeah.
That was a bad one, and mostly because.
But again, it was. But you alerted your manager to the fact that it said DNR.
Yeah,
I
They
did.
were like, "Don't worry about it."
More or less.
Well, you can,
yeah,
but the blame has to be shared a little bit, I think.
a little bit. But he was like, it was more of like, "Well, no, I didn't know it was that," and because sometimes those things will pop up because it needs tire pressure or something like that. But
like you're trying to get people out the door, so there's that extra pressure
quickly, and
there, and that's true in a lot of internships probably too. Like there's pressure on you to complete this report as fast as you can. Like we need it on our desk by end of day.
For sure. And typos will happen or something, but hopefully not something as serious as running a car to somebody that has a potential to catch on fire. So that was a career mistake, but it's always good if you can get out ahead of a mistake, talk to somebody, try to find ways to walk something back as best you can. Definitely recommend doing that.
Am I going?
Yeah.
The stakes were not as high for mine.
It was a life or death.
I was thinking about, so I used to, was that on my resume? I used to work at an ice cream stand.
That was not, I don't think that was on your resume.
Here in Philadelphia. And I liked that job, but I was not there very long. So I think I didn't really even register this as a mistake until well after the fact. But I feel like I was very fortunate and lucky for them to have hired me in the first place. And then I was only there for about a month. And I kind of just quit on the middle of the summer when it was still really busy because I got offered another job as a camp counselor, which I know was on my resume. And I was just happy to be a camp counselor. And I had gone to that camp when I was a kid. So I was like, of course I'm going to do this. Like I just said yes immediately to that. And it's low stakes. It's just an ice cream stand. So it's not the end of the world. And I was just a kid still in, freshman year of college or sophomore year of college or something like that. But I look back and I probably should have handled that situation better. I maybe should have either tried to reach out to the camp to become a counselor sooner so I knew what I was doing. I don't know how I just kind of fell into that midway through the summer. I think it was more just an emergency, and I always wanted to work there, so I don't know why I wouldn't have just reached out in the first place. I also probably could have better tried to have some kind of semblance together of how I could help them before I left or put things together. But instead, I kind of just ghosted them more or less. Like I told them that I was leaving, but I was like, I got to be done by the end of the week or something like that. I told them on a Tuesday or something probably. So
didn't even train your replacement.
I was just out the door really quick. I mean, there's some ways where that happens, but I do think I had no awareness whatsoever at the time that I was putting them in a bind. I don't think I was looking at it from their perspective at all. I think I was just looking at it as, I can work at camp. Of course, I'm definitely going to do that instead of working at this ice cream stand. So I kind of wish I was a little more empathetic towards them in that situation, because it was a good job and those were good people still.
Well, so I have a couple mistakes that I've made, but the first one that comes to mind is it was like a summer job, and I was helping out. I'm trying to be so vague; it's so hard. Just trying to help
Why
an
be vague?
office
Who are
at
you
another
protecting?
institution.
How juicy is this? Is that why we're being vague?
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
Yeah,
Keep going. Keep going.
definitely.
We're in the right spot.
Yeah. So I was helping out another institution, and I was working under someone that I felt like we just were not compatible in her leadership style. It was just not a preferred.
That's tough. It's tough.
It was really, really hard. And I felt like I kind of had something to prove a lot of the time. Oh wait, I can't do the yay. I felt like I kind of sort of had something to prove, so I just kept taking on projects, and I feel like every time I would take on something, like the goalpost would move, and then I would get like in trouble. I felt like every time she called me, it was like such anxiety, like I was going to the principal office, and I just really felt like, I mean, what I know now is that I felt like she was a little unorganized, and she reported to like whoever she reported to, and I don't know, there was some issues going all the way up the chain, basically. And I just feel like I just had to have a real deal conversation. Like, I feel like, I would like to know things in advance. Please don't ask me to do slides for a meeting that you have tonight. And I just had to, create boundaries.
Yeah,
That's the best way to put
Don't
it.
drop things on my plate last minute.
Yeah.
Be more professional.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
That's a
I
tough
wish
thing
I
to
had
say
Chat
professional.
GPT to say, like, per my last email or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that it was just we were not, like, we didn't really mesh in the leadership. I think that that's something that moving forward I asked in interviews, or I try to like ask, like, at the end of, like, at the end of a interview, they ask, like, do you have any questions, asking about your their leadership style, and
Yeah, what's
asking
their
about
supervision
things like that.
style,
Supervision
or
style, all those different things. So yeah, so I just kind of felt like the micromanagement did not work out, and then the lack of organization did not work out for my own anxiety. But a mistake that I had made was sending something to her, and there was a typo, and she sent that out to somebody else. And so definitely I had to take accountability that there was a typo.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like if I send something to you should check it too. So there.
Oh, I had that exact same.
But there was no accountability. It was you who did this wrong.
Yeah, I had that exact same situation where I had a supervisor whose style really did not mesh with mine, and we got into a thing where something very similar happened. I designed an ad, and the ad went out, and the ad had some typos. But I had shown the ad to him and to someone else, and they both had said, okay.
looks good.
And when it came back with typos, he was furious. And, ultimately, it was my fault, and they were my typos. But I said, I showed this to you because I know that I don't see typos all the time. And so we had gotten to this thing where it was really tricky because I felt like if I had to bring everything to them, and then they would come back to me and say, you need to stop bringing things to me. I was like, okay. And then I would do something, and they didn't like how I did it. And they would say, why did you do it this way? I said, because you told me to just take the initiative. That was an impossible situation, right? And I was like, clearly there's no getting around this, right? And it culminated in I was planning a big event, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it my way. And they got so furious. Now, I made a couple of, I should have kept, I went too far the other way. I should have kept them more updated on what was going on, but I really was like, it doesn't matter because I'm not getting the support. So I'm just going to do it the way I'm going to do it. And the event went off, and the event went really well. And I got thanked at the end because it was a good event, but everything leading up to it was awful. And I was like, this has to be the last thing I do here because it's going to be like this every time. They're either they're going to micromanage me, and then they're going to get angry that basically because I wasn't doing it the way they would have
Right.
done it. Right. So they couldn't let go. And I also didn't know how to smooth it enough, right?
Mhm.
To be like, just let me handle it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which is what I said, but that's not enough, right? So it was definitely a learning experience, where I think now I would have been able to just like give them enough information to make them feel like it was being taken care of, and I would have been doing it the way I wanted to, and then they would come to the event and be like, "Oh man, what a great event."
Right.
And they wouldn't have had the anxiety about it
Mhm.
because they felt they were in the dark, or I was just telling them not to worry. Basically, that's what I just kept saying. Don't worry about it,
Don't worry.
which is not enough information,
Yeah.
right?
Sometimes makes people worry more.
Don't worry about
Exactly,
it. I got it. Don't worry
exactly.
about it.
So I definitely think that I would handle that. It was not a good situation
Mhm.
and probably wouldn't have worked out long term, but I could have made that easier if I could have just figured out a different way of saying don't worry about it.
Right.
If I could just give them enough information for them to be comfortable without them feeling like they had to micromanage me.
Yeah. And managing those relationships is always really hard when you have a new supervisor, you're in a new role.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
it happens a lot when I talk to students who are coming back from internships.
Mhm.
Where and when I do mock interviews when they're talking about stories which things were challenging. Obviously, I think we're being more open because we can be a little bit negative about some things here. But the hard part is when you twist those into how can I find this to be a challenge that comes out positive on the
Yeah.
other end,
Mhm.
which I could find pieces in all of that with what all three of you
Oh,
said.
for sure.
Where
Yeah.
there's it's a learning opportunity. There's a reflective piece of what you could have done better or what else could have happened that I think could be super relevant to a lot of people too. Well, it sounds like the two of you didn't really make that big a mistake.
So at that same job, I made a huge mistake.
Okay.
And again, sort of like with Dustin, I feel like there was some communication issues with the manager.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Communication issues tend to exacerbate
Yeah.
any mistake.
So
Very true.
it's new student orientation season as we speak. There's a major event going on right now. So an event that Penn used to have that we don't do currently is something called the Penn Reading Project, where the entire incoming class read the same book over the summer, and then
Okay.
typically the author would come or someone with knowledge on
It's kind of cool.
the area, whatever they read about. One year it was a painting. They actually all studied
Oh,
a
that's cool.
painting that was at the PMA. That was really interesting.
I would have been like, yeah, I looked at it.
Actually, so wait,
But when I was in college, I'd have been like, there it is.
so
We had that
actually,
at Florida
well,
State.
they read about it too. Although, again, sort of minor mistakes. I was not a part of this, and David and Troy, this was not their fault. Just they picked it because it was on display at the PMA,
Yeah.
and then the PMA took it out of rotation for restoration. So when the kids went to the museum for the event, it was no longer on display,
Oh.
which was nobody's fault, right? That was just one of those ironies. But the mistake I made was I started at the start of the summer, right? So I started right at the height of their gearing up to do new student orientation.
Mhm.
And I had not expected to be that involved in new student orientation. My main job description didn't involve that. I knew I would have to be because it was part of the office, but I really got thrown into. There's so much to do, and it was a really small team, and my God, they do such a great job. Penn NSO is amazing. But so my manager said to me, I need you to please book the space for the Penn Reading Project. Make sure that that's all taken care of.
Mhm.
Talk to this person. And I did. And the person said, yep, we've got this, got the auditorium booked and that, and then the book room for the reception. Great.
Mhm.
Okay. And he kept asking me, are you sure if that's all confirmed? I haven't really seen, I feel like I should have seen a confirmation. I said, I talked to whoever it was, so-and-so, it's good. I haven't heard anything else. And he said, just double check with Troy that you're talking to the right person. So I went to Troy and I said, hey, I'm just supposed to check on these Penn Reading Project reservations. I talked to so-and-so, and they said they're good. And he was like, oh, great, we're good. So here's the information I did not have. There's 2 parts to the pen reading project: the author event and the discussions. So half the class goes to the author event in the morning, while the other half of the class goes to classrooms on campus and in a faculty or staff led discussion talk about the book, and then they swap, and the classes go hear the author, and then the people that were hearing the author go to the classrooms. So they wanted me to reserve
Every
the
single
classrooms.
Yeah, that's way harder too.
And
Yikes.
so I think they were at a social event or some other meeting, and someone said to the head of NSO, "Oh, we're really disappointed that you're not using the classrooms." He's like, "What are you talking about?" So, I mean, luckily it was this, it's NSO time. There was nothing, but was very rushed. And I just kept saying, how was I? You just kept saying the pen reading project. So I thought the author event, I must have confirmed that 20 times. Probably the Annenberg Center probably thought I was insane. Right. And it was just, so
We have the room.
I did not ask enough questions.
Yes.
I did not ask enough questions, because the fact that he kept asking me should have said to me, but if I keep telling you it's okay, and it's so what am I missing? Right. So how can I assure you that this is okay? Maybe I should have shown him, here's what I'm looking at. Annenberg is reserved. And he would have been like, no, not Annenberg, all the classrooms. Oh, okay.
Right.
And, but I was new. I didn't have I just thought it was one event and not 100 events. So I didn't ask enough questions. There was not great communication, again, because it was just a busy time. You're getting thrown into the deep end. I was doing things I wasn't expecting to be doing, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't ask the right questions. And again, luckily it would have been much worse if we got into the day and there weren't any classrooms available. But, it all got resolved in plenty of time.
That would have been rough.
But it was rough. It was really rough. And so I just said, I don't, at the time I remember saying, I don't know how I could have avoided that. I didn't understand what you were asking me, but I thought I understood what you were asking me, but at no time did anybody say the word classroom.
Assumptions
right?
were made.
Nobody said the word discussion group. So I was like, the auditorium is reserved 20 times,
Well, if you were looking forward to being a part of the pen reading project, Michael killed it.
I did not. No, that was my first year, and we led many successful ones after that.
Oh, okay.
I'm afraid COVID killed it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. So, and then, just our campus priorities have changed since then. It was a really fabulous program. I hope that it can come back someday in some ways. I met a couple of really great authors. We always designed a special T-shirt. We had a graphic artist in the office.
It's just cool to have like the whole campus or all the people who are coming in have like something to unify.
The provost at the time thought, we've got 4 undergraduate schools, and they all share the experience of convocation.
Yeah.
And then they don't have another shared experience to graduation. Right. So how can we give them a shared academic style experience? And they came up with the reading project.
That's awesome.
And then eventually that grew into a reading and writing project. So you actually had to write something about the book as well as part of your freshman writing seminar. It was a really well thought out, really well executed program. And just, times have changed. But I hope someday, some way, it'll come back. I was always pushing for it to be a movie one year.
And that's a great idea.
Let's all watch a movie, because then you could also communally watch the movie.
Yes.
Annenberg Center has an amazing film projector.
Or just do it on the lawn. That'd be cool.
Or just do it on the lawn,
like
yeah.
Drive-in style.
Yeah, everybody sit on the field at Franklin Field, and that'd be great.
I love that idea. I like the painting idea too, but like I said, if I were a college student, I would have looked at that painting for about 10 seconds and been like, all right, I can talk about it. Just made something up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think you would have been alone.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. And I think a movie is more approachable, where it would have been like, okay, I'll sit down and see how this is, and
especially
grappled with
today,
it a little bit longer. Yeah,
we did actually. I think the very last year that we did it, and I was already back at Career Services, but I was still involved. they read the play Ma Rainey's Black Bottom the year the movie came out.
Oh,
And so I think they all got to. I think they got the rights to stream the movie through the Canva course.
that's cool.
That's cool.
And they all watched the movie because I led a discussion group, and I remember we had a lot of discussions about the differences between the play and the movie. So it was it was such a great thing. I hope someday it can come back, but this is neither here nor there. This is not really careers, but
yeah,
it was a great that whole experience was learning for me, particularly about asking questions and not just assuming that I knew what I was being asked.
for sure. I was gonna say, let's go to. I want Dustin to have time because
Dustin's got something
we
great
got a
planned
game
for
or
us.
something for him, Dustin.
Yeah, so there's a trend that goes around on social media a little bit, and it's like a blind ranking type game where you are to rank something in a list without knowing what comes next. So normally when we're ranking things, we have a full complete list, and then you can start to put it. So the idea of this is we're going to cover our website has, and just our office in general, an extensive number of resources. So the idea behind this game is I'm going to list out a resource, and the three of you are going to work together to sort of assess more or less
Try not to look at
what
Dustin's
position
screen.
of what position
man.
the resource should go in.
Michael's seeing the answer.
Without
I only saw one. I only saw one.
So when I share the resource, we're going to put it in the order somewhere, and then we'll go to the next resource. So you could ultimately
Can you
maybe
move it up or down?
So
No.
you can't
No,
move
you're
it.
locked
So
in.
You're
Yeah.
locked
It's
in.
blind.
You're locked in.
Blind
All right, how
ranking.
many total?
There's 6.
So top
Ooh,
6
top
we're going.
six.
Top
through.
6.
All right,
Top
All right.
6.
Let's do it.
All right. So 1 to 6 ranking. Where would you place targeted resume?
Wait, one is the
One
most
is the
One is
best
best.
resource.
Oh, the best we got. Okay.
Best we got. Targeted resume. Where does that fall on the list without knowing what comes next?
That's like number 2.
Ooh.
You say number 2?
I was gonna
Yeah.
say 5 or 6.
I was gonna go
Whoa.
6. I was gonna go 6. You think it's the second most useful thing that we have?
Okay, so
You could
the way
name
that I'm
more
putting this-
things. Not that it's bad. It is a great resource. It's
Yeah,
helpful.
It's still in the top 6.
That's the caveat. These are all great.
It's a great way to be able to see, especially through the lens of how an AI or applicant tracking system looks at your resume. It helps
Right.
you kind of adapt to that, which is nice.
So let me tell you why I
I
would
think
put
there
it
are
at
other ways
number-
you could do that.
I'm gonna tell you why I feel like it's number 2. I think it is something that when students see it,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, this is why I have a spreadsheet of 300 jobs and I only had 3 interviews. So I think it's
Okay.
really important. Wait, so what is the question? Maybe I should go back to
The
that.
question is, blindly, where would you rank targeted resume as a resource for students on the scale from 1 to 6? 1 is the best thing
Like
we
most
got,
important.
most important resource, to 6.
If you were sitting out here ranking every single resource we had, you would put targeted resume as number 2.
I feel like it is very important to
Great.
getting
Don't
a job.
talk her out of
I
it.
don't want to talk.
I
about
think
it.
you
All
guys
right.
you need to meet
Let's
in the middle
agree to say
somewhere.
I
Four?
just think it's really important
No,
to
I think
finding
everyone's
a job.
making their own list.
Oh, we're making our own.
No, he
It's
said
a
we have to work
group list.
together.
Group
Oh, it's a
list.
group
Group
list.
list.
Move down
So
to
y'all
four.
want to bring that all the way down?
It's got to. Yeah.
We're going to 4.
I think it is super important for them to lock in on a resume. I mean, on an interview.
Well,
But okay, fine. I'll bring it. We could bring it down. Fine.
4. And then
4?
we'll fight over it at the end.
We could
Yeah.
put it at 4. Fine.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't know we had to compromise.
Yep.
I know it's too
All right.
much.
The next resource, career shift. Career
6.
shift.
5.
I didn't think we'd be so in disagreement.
Where are you putting that at? I hope not 2.
I would have said at
That's a
least
top
3.
4.
At least 3.
Whoa.
Really?
We can say I'm down for 5. We can say 5,
Okay.
but just know that you're both wrong.
Wow.
That's crazy. Okay.
Career shift is a great way to find people's contact information. So if you don't know someone's email address, it's one of the only ways that you can get it if it's not already just out there online.
Yeah, but there's so many ways to get in touch with people.
Is there?
LinkedIn.
They might not
Yeah,
always
but people
respond.
don't check LinkedIn.
Handshake.
Got to email them. I mean, I will say there's Apollo is a good extension tool you can put on to
Yeah.
find people's email addresses. There are other things to do something like that.
All right.
All right, just keep in mind
We'll keep it at
spots
5,
4
all right.
and 5 are now taken up.
We got it at 5.
Career Explorer.
6.
6.
I'll go 6 mainly because it's so underutilized that I think it's
Again,
hard to put anything.
It's super
else there.
handy for the people that need it, but like
Right.
in our whole toolkit of things,
Right.
for the person that needs it, it might
Right.
be number 1. But
And it's a great way that people can learn more and explore about different options out there. And not only that, like it takes it's almost like a skill assessment tool where it'll say, do you like this or this? And you choose. And then as you're going through this, it'll say, like, here are your top 20 different jobs and industries that you could consider. And it's cool. You can click in and see a lot of resources about them. But I agree. So, like, I'm fine with 6.
Yeah.
So
All right,
we've got 4, 5, and 6 locked in.
so that means
These
that
better be amazing.
the next 3 resources are going to be
Duke it
somewhere in
out
the
for
top 3.
All right, let's go.
Handshake.
One.
One for sure.
There's no way you're being. Handshake has too much. That's how you make appointments with us.
A
It
job
has-
board,
Point.
events,
Job board,
Register for
events,
events.
career
fairs, virtual career fairs.
Yeah, one.
All right.
Hands down.
Networking.
There's a people
Networking.
tab. You can see
Yep.
what upperclassmen are up to. I mean, that's one.
It has to be, right?
Undisputed.
Has to be. I
Definitely.
always say it's the key to our office. One way or another,
Yeah.
you got to get into Handshake.
I
All right.
agree with that.
The outcomes data that we have on our website.
3.
2. All right, our top 3 is perfect so far.
I would've put that
And
at 3.
so now by default, everyone is left with for this list, the 3rd most valuable resource we have, which is the Penn Career Services photo booth.
3.
All right,
Our
that-
top 3 is really good.
It has to be 3. There's nowhere else to put it.
I know, but I
All right. The question is then, would
was
you
4?
change? 4 was targeted resume,
What was 5?
career shift, and then career explorer. Does the photo booth get overtaken by any
It's
of
a good
those?
list. It's a good list.
I think it's a solid
In the
list.
end, it became a good list. We were.
I don't
We
Tina-
had our
Tina
divisions.
still seems upset.
I'm angry. I would definitely
Good one.
move the photo booth a little bit down. I think it's super important. I definitely think it's top 6, but yeah, I want to move targeted resume up. I think it's just one of those underused thing, and I think it's a game change. Like, I have so many appointments where students talk about, I have this whole color coded spreadsheet of all the jobs I've applied to, and I'm like, there's 2 things that's probably missing. You didn't target your resume, so you got screened out, and you probably didn't network. Like, those to me are like the 2 things that's gonna solidify something. So yes, I'm livid.
I'm coming around a little bit because not only that, like
You coming around, Nettie?
a little bit.
All right.
Because I love the photo booth. Our literal blood, sweat, and tears went into building that photo booth.
Literal.
Like
Literally.
literally built it. And put
Literally.
it up.
Twice.
It's an amazing resource for campus if you want to
I
stop
agree
by
with
our
that.
office to get a professional looking headshot. However, I think like iPhone cameras are pretty good. You could probably just stand on a white wall and still get a pretty decent
Snow Iris.
shot. It's no photo booth at career services, but I think there's
Definitely
like
not.
easily accessible ways to do that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Where I feel like there is an extra emphasis on, and honestly, like the resume is more important than your headshot.
Absolutely. I mean,
More
the headshot
people
comes
are
after
going to
all of
look at
that.
your resume than look at more meaningful people are going to look at your resume when you're applying to something than
Mhm.
see what your headshot is on LinkedIn.
I
Especially
agree.
with how many people will like redact names and stuff. You don't always
It's true.
know what hiring committees can see to be able to find you on LinkedIn anyway.
And a lot of students come in already with a headshot. I mean, I know
Mm-hmm.
that it usually needs to be updated and not be like your senior portrait or something like that, but it's something that is like on priority list. It's probably can go like not last, but
I mean,
definitely-
and ultimately, like Natty said, I think it's a great list. These are 6
Yeah.
of, I mean, if not hundreds of resources
It's
that
fun.
our office has one way or another. So it's kind of fun. You don't know what's coming next, so where do you put things? I think you guys did a great job.
I forgot how competitive Tina is.
oh
yeah.
my god,
I had forgotten. Tina, who when we went bowling for weeks was talking about how she was going to school us all.
Okay, let's also be.
And
very
then you
clear.
told her the
I
bumpers were
said
off.
that I really
Exactly.
like bowling
Yes.
and I want to win, but I
Yes.
never said I was like great at bowling. But I do really like it.
Okay.
Sorry, my sorry. Yeah.
All right.
said
Well,
angry and livid.
while things are spicy,
Ooh.
we're gonna end today's program the same way we ended the program earlier in the week, and I'm gonna ask everybody what their current career services hot take is.
Tina, you want to go first?
No,
Yeah.
because I kind of
No.
like forgot.
You're already coming in hot, so let's
Yeah,
let's
keep
do
it rolling.
But wait, how do you do this again? I know I remember
What's
the
your
video.
take? You just tell us your take.
Yeah, it could be something that's a little controversial,
Yeah, well-
like career shift is more important than the
I
photo
know you got
booth.
notes on your phone. I know you thought about this.
Yeah, no, I did, but I'm like hot take.
All right,
right, so my hot
Dustin,
take
you go
is-
Here,
instead.
I already gave mine. Huddle rooms are awful.
All right, my hot take is gonna be I really don't like doing cover letters. Resume, I'm team resume all the way. That's my.
I
Oh,
think
you're anti-cover letter in
I'm
in
anti-cover
general.
letter.
Like when you're applying to places.
Yeah, when I'm applying to places, like I just need to tailor my resume, and there you go. You
Ooh,
either want to
that
interview
is
me
a
or
hot
not.
take.
It's a good hot take.
Like, stop
Because-
asking me for cover letters.
There's great division within our career services
Yeah.
community, not just like at our institution, but also at recruiters at the same company. I've heard the complete reverse
Yeah.
of. I was just telling a group of students earlier this. I've heard recruiters from the same company. One say, I never look at cover letters; they're useless, and the
Mhm.
other one say, those are the most important thing that I look at because otherwise every candidate looks the same to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm hiring, the cover letter is so important. So important.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Me too.
So I 100% disagree with you, Tina.
Same.
She's gonna get mad. We all disagree
Yeah.
with her.
Like when we were hiring graduate assistants and PCAs for our office, especially at Penn, particularly at Penn, a lot of those resumes look quite similar.
Yeah, and particularly when you're getting so many
Yeah.
resumes, right? So the first thing you're going to do is, just weed out the ones that are just completely wrong, right? Either the resumes just are
Yeah.
bad or
Not a fit in some
right,
sort of
just
way.
doesn't seem like fit. And then you're going to look at the cover letter. All right, this resume was pretty good. Let me read this cover letter. Dear Michael, I'm really excited to apply for the job of chief scientist in Penn's. Like, oh, you sent the wrong cover letter,
Mhm. Right.
And
Here's
then
my class syllabus.
right, or and then
Yeah.
and then you get
One of our
it
work studies
down.
did that.
Then you get it down to
Ain't got hired.
good cover letters, and then
Literally
some of
just
them
goes
are
to
like, oh, this person seems very passionate about wanting to do this
Right.
work, or in some cases like, oh, this person is really interesting because their resume is not jumping out at me as a natural fit for this job.
Mhm.
But now that I'm reading the kind of work that they've been doing and why it could apply here, yeah, let's bring them in for an interview. I'd like to
Yeah.
learn more about that.
Immediate interview is someone who has something specific to say about the job
Mhm.
in the cover letter because I'm like, oh, they actually care.
Absolutely.
They
Yeah,
absolutely
they didn't just
care.
copy and paste this, use it for every single
Or
job. and
ChatGPT.
I think it just gives people an opportunity to explain if they know the resume is really not a great fit, acknowledge that. I'd rather somebody get ahead of that in a cover letter.
Sure.
And there's an opportunity to do that. So there's more reason to share your why
Mhm.
as opposed to a resume, which we have said you don't want to be overly fluffy with extra information. The cover letter, I feel like you can get a little bit of your personality in there.
So have we swayed you?
No, but but what I can say though is I do think it's a way for you to stand out, right? So if you're in a space where everybody has a 4.0, obviously it's some everyone is at an IV. If you're applying to like a specific competitive role, it does make you stand out. But I just think it's just I don't know. I just feel like it's just extra, and it's just a lot. And I feel like a lot of times I see when we're hiring like ChatGPT, so it's like you're not really going super specific into it. But
Mhm.
I definitely
Well,
I
then you're
definitely
using it wrong. You're using ChatGPT wrong.
that is true. But I just think that in general that I think that it definitely can help you stand out for sure, hands down. It help you stand out. So if they say it's optional, always do it. If there is a space to put it, always do it because it can help you stand out.
Oh yeah, if they asked for it,
You have to.
you have to. Yeah.
You don't have a choice.
They eliminate
Yeah.
pools based off of sometimes like who's submitted what what materials. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes the perspective is if you couldn't have put in the effort to submit the materials we're asking for, why are you going to put in the effort for the job sometimes? At least I've heard that mindset shared before.
Me too. And there's a lot of time asterisks that you can't move on until you upload something.
Yeah.
All right, good take, Tina.
Dustin?
Not sending a thank you note after an interview automatically gets you out of consideration for the role.
Ooh.
Yeah, thank me for my time, please.
Ooh.
I'm extremely passionate about thank you
I mean,
notes.
I'm very pro thank you notes.
Yeah, I am
but
too.
Mhm.
An automatic elimination.
You're out.
I want to agree. It's so harsh. It's so harsh. But
It's harsh.
I want to agree.
I
with
want to
you.
agree with you
I
too,
do.
but then in a lot of spaces you won't have a pool.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
The
That's-
best
yeah.
candidate
No
might
one's
be
getting
someone.
hired.
That's-
Thank you.
That's a good point. And I'll say that it is
So
It is-
open up the job again.
it's hot takey in a way of if it really came down to it, would I go back to the same pool if I thought somebody was great? Yes. But I just think something that is really not overly difficult to do
Mhm.
and people treat it's so much more than just thanking somebody for their time. It really is an extension of the interview. Let's say you didn't answer something well in the interview and you have a
Mhm.
small chance to revisit that question in your thank you note. Oh, Natty, I was thinking a little bit more about what it means to collaborate, cross-functionally with a team. I forgot to mention that I got to work
Yeah.
on this project, and I'm not saying go into a full cover letter of that answer, but if there's something in particular you want to include that, if they share
If
something
you made a mistake, if
personal-
you're like, oh crap, I totally answered that wrong.
Yeah.
You can say like, oh, I was thinking more about
Exactly.
that. And
Mhm.
Exactly.
yeah, that's a
And
good
so I
opportunity.
think more so it's more so from the perspective of students or just people in general are selling themselves short of the opportunity to solidify their great interview. I have a great feeling about a candidate, and then they hit me with a thank you note, I'm like, wow, like they've really checked all the boxes.
Right.
And I just don't know what goes through people's minds when they don't send one.
It doesn't take that long to do. Like
No.
even a relatively short thank you. Oh, that was I had a mistake before and I forgot it and I panicked into a different one. That was one of my mistakes.
What a mistake.
What a mistake was that I applied to a job and I was like, I know everybody at this job. I don't have to write a real thank you note. So I just said, hey, thanks. It was great chatting. It wasn't bad.
It was great.
It was like two or three sentences long. And the feedback that I got was you really should have written a more detailed thank you note that went in depth about was more thoughtful about it. It made it seem like you weren't serious about the position.
So when I do hiring and I have a column in any type of matrix, like, did they send a thank you note? I think it's really important.
You
and
really do.
I have my father to thank for that. He definitely implemented that in me. Papa Mills has a great structure and strategy, which we can get into, another time as another topic. But I do think that thank you notes are a necessity. And I'm really hard pressed to give somebody a role if they didn't go through that step, unless they're an absolute rock star. But then after hiring, I'd be like, yo, like, why did you not send a thank you note? Especially in our world.
Right.
With where we're advising
Well,
people to do it and you don't do it for something in our office, it's a little backwards.
Thank you, Dustin, for that
Case
hot
well,
take.
You're welcome.
made.
That was a good one.
All right, NTG Leach,
Too many letters.
lay it on us.
All right, I used this one earlier today with students, and some of this reflects my personal values, and if your values are different, that's okay.
Oh
But
boy.
mine is stop chasing prestige. It just doesn't
No,
matter. It doesn't matter. And in particular, like we have a lot of students who are like, well, I need to be at this number one firm or I'm not going to have a career in this field in the future. And I feel like I'm constantly reminding students, you're already at one of the number one schools in the entire world. If you like, Wharton is the number one undergraduate business program for many years too. And I work with Wharton students. I remind them, you have prestige. You're at an Ivy League institution. You're a number one business school in those cases. Like your resume will have that forever because of it.
I love that. You are the prestige.
Yeah, you
True.
got it.
So
You
true.
got it. So why do you necessarily need that? And that's where I say, like, sometimes his values are different, and that's okay. Like, I think if that's what brings you some sort of satisfaction when you think about your accomplishments, like that can be okay. But my little pushback on that would be say, why does that matter to you? Like, you might be able to find a just as equally well-paying job, a job that you get just as many great skills, if not better, because maybe it's a smaller team, for example, or a smaller firm or company where you get to see more transactions, more deals, or more things going on. Like there's really added benefits there that I think a lot of students don't always reflect on.
Yeah, and if you're just taking a job so that around the holidays you could say I work at X place, it's a very fleeting feeling. I would much rather a student be able to talk about what they're doing, being passionate about it, and if it's not somewhere at a prestigious, and whatever prestige means too, right? Like there's a lot of different ways to just define that. But I think it's a great take. Completely agree.
I agree too.
When you at your cover letter, they have a hard time writing the cover letter because they're like, the reason that they're wanting to apply is because it's such a great company.
And everybody's writing the same thing.
Like, how do you actually hit home the real details of why that company or that place stands out is always going to make you a better candidate anyway. So even if you are into prestige in that element, I would say stop thinking about it so much and think instead about, like, why is this firm prestigious in the first place? Or why is this company prestigious? And then hone in on what makes them so great as the reasons that you're highlighting, rather than just the fact that they're known as great universally.
That's a good take.
All right.
Michael, you got one?
I mean,
just huddle rooms?
Huddle room. I mean, I got some super spicy takes that are not for YouTube.
For career services after hours.
Yeah. For the paid stream.
Yeah.
For the paid stream. But
that's the McDonald's sponsor.
The thing, I mean, I don't think this is particularly spicy or hot, but it ties in a little bit about what you were saying, Natty. I think the step that too many students skip over is reflection, and that they just sort of go, and that's the temperature of the campus. Like I understand that, and not just with careers, but with classes and extracurriculars, and it's a really it can feel like a runaway train. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in that and not stop and think about, why am I doing these things, and what do I really want, and how do things really work. I had an interaction with someone the other day that was frankly borderline rude, really wanting a specific name and contact information for a recruiter at a company, right? And I said, we don't have that, right? Here's where you could see if they had a public contact in Handshake. They do not. So
we have ways to help people identify
Right.
those, but we don't always have. Here's the person.
Exactly, and that's what they wanted. And they essentially were like, "You're lying to me, right?
Yes.
I know that you must have a contact." And I was like, "Well, they're coming to the career fair. Why don't you talk to them at the career fair?" But it was very urgent for them, right? And they just, for whatever reason, they could not hear what I was saying, which was, I do not have the ability to give you what you want. I have some tools that maybe you can find what you want. They have a here's their general recruiting contact. So why don't you ask the company, is there someone more specific I should be in touch with? But they really just wanted like a white glove level of service.
Sorry, all these firms have like 100 people with all the same job title, and it's like, who is actually the right?
It can
one
be
for
very
what you
difficult
need
to
is
figure that
difficult. So I
out.
think from both of our perspectives, from both the student's perspective, maybe it's easy to use some of those resources, but then they get a list of 200 people. How do I then choose the right one? But also same for us. Like we might see someone who's coming to career fair, but that might be an admin person that has nothing to do with the hiring for the position that person's interested in. So there's all sorts of ways that makes that, I think, challenging. It
can be very challenging, and it's just like we don't have like a little private portfolio of contacts. Right. Sometimes we do, and sometimes we know.
We used to do that more. We used to have the business card binder or whatever.
Yep, and frankly, in some way, we still have that. It's just through Handshake.
Through Handshake, yeah.
But we used to have, if an employer came to campus, whether that meant they were coming to a career fair or they were conducting an on-campus interview, we had them leave their business card, and we filed it in a binder. And so you could come to the office. We went through a brief period of scanning them, but they were
put them on a floppy disk.
No. But
Facts.
you could come to the career services office, and we had the binder, and you could look and see who was here and get their contact information. It was very helpful. Now, if you come to a career fair, we talked about this in the last stream, but every employer's table at the career fair will have a little QR code, and you can scan that when you're talking to them as a little check-in, and that's a really mutually beneficial to you and the employer, because you'll get a little download of all the folks that you talk to, and so will the employer. Will get a little download with your information. So that could be really helpful for following up. And again, if someone, we have less of this now, but it's still happening. I know we're going to start next week with a couple of recruiters coming to do interviews. If someone has come to campus physically, then we know who was here, and we don't have the binder anymore, but our recruiting staff could probably make that connection.
There are times when that's easy, and then times where
but if it's someone who hasn't come to campus, their job is posted on their website and not in Handshake, the chances that we know exactly who you need to talk to are kind of pretty slim, right?
Yeah. We can help point the right direction.
Right.
But
Right. So that can be tough. I mean, I think it's not just that specific example, but there are times where people really just want us to do something for them, or just tell them what to do.
So what's your take? I forgot your take.
That people, they're not being reflective enough.
Oh, okay. I like that. I thought it was going to be nicer.
Well,
which is kind of true.
That shouldn't be a hot take.
I think it's part and parcel, right?
Well, I was talking about this earlier today as well, because a lot of times these recruiters that you're talking to, even though when you're getting in this like high stress situation where you're like, well, I need them to know this, a lot of times you lose sight of the element that these people are out there advocating for you.
Yes.
They're probably not the only decision maker in the room or the decision maker at all. They might just be someone who's administratively collecting materials, collecting information, and passing that on to a hiring manager or someone else. So these are the people that are the most important to be nice to, who can help you through that process. Michael, we had a question in the chat that I'm going to bring up just real quickly we can address. It is, how did I tailor my resume and cover letter, or how do I tailor my resume and cover letter for entry-level roles when I have limited experience? Which kind of goes into that early, that first time you're looking at things.
So I think we can touch on two things that have come up. One, Tina's right. Targeted resume is a great tool. So if you don't know what targeted resume is, it's a resource, a web resource that we have on our website where you can upload your resume, and you can paste the job description of the job you're applying to, and then targeted resume goes, okay, you should add the following
Mm-hmm.
terms to your resume to make it a better match for this job. And it'll give you a little percentile, right? This is right now a 60% match for this job. Things that would improve it are the following skills or the following words. So that can be very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so when you have that as a frame, then you think about, all right, so what do I have in my life, even if they're not on my resume yet, that I could show I have these skills or I could use those words. So whether it's classes you've taken, whatever limited work experience you've had, extracurriculars, all that sort of things, even interests, right? Because maybe you've got an interest that requires a skill set, right? And you can say, I don't have any quote unquote practical experience, but I'm really interested in blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's like something like programming. Like, so I tinker on Roblox or I've built my own website or things like that. So find out what it is that the job is looking for, and then think about what are the things in your life that reflect that, and make sure that they're highlighted on the resume. That's why I called out Tina's resume as being really nice, that she had limited work experience, but then she had all these other experiences that she labeled as leadership experience, and she was very clear about why those things were important and why those things would bring skills to the workplace.
And Michael and I do a presentation on transferable skills.
We do.
Getting out of the framework of I don't have direct experience here, but instead thinking about what are my transferable skills that would make me really good in this role. That's how you can identify all the things that you were just talking about, of picking those things out in a seemingly different place. We talked about, was it Dustin's work at Chick-fil-A? Because there wasn't as much context there, it didn't look particularly relevant.
Right.
But there's lots of ways that he could have pulled
if he had some bullet points about
teamwork,
customer
managing
service,
financial
public
transactions,
facing,
organizational details. Like, there's a lot of those things that'll probably be useful for a lot of different roles that he could have highlighted there and still put something that is particularly relevant for that company.
And I think what you're saying too, Michael, is something I find particular to be true with students, especially, is they undersell what counts as experience.
Yes,
or this doesn't count because I wasn't paid for this thing that I did. That's not the case. If you could speak to it in an interview, if you can write about it in a way that it boosted some sort of skill set or gave you exposure to something, I think that's great. So don't discount experiences that you have. Like Natty mentioned earlier, a lot of people, particularly coming in from high school, may have had that retail or that food job. And I know the question was more so about, entry level, but that's why you're here, to gain some experience, whether it's class, the clubs, projects and stuff too, especially if it's the technical roles. You could spin a lot of things, a lot of different
just
ways.
Think about, I won't go into the full spiel like I have in the past, but when I first applied to work in career services, I had very little professional office experience. I had only really worked in one office, and then I had a lot of arts experience and some retail experience, as I mentioned. So I was able to really talk about why my experience as an actor and a director would be relevant to planning career fairs. But I take direction. I give direction. I'm very organized, right? I talked a lot about how when you're a college student doing theater or athletics, you have to balance so much. You have to balance your time. You have to organize your time so that you do your classwork, but you're still available because you're putting so much time into your athletics or doing a show, right? That's your entire evening, right? And your weekend. So being able to organize and being able to work with a variety of people, like all of those things. And then, when you're directing a show, having to organize teams and meet dates and all of that. So I definitely talked myself into a job, and I still haven't gotten rid of me. Any other questions from the chat, Natty? Otherwise, I think we're just about out of time.
No, I think we're mostly out of time, so let's wrap it up. But thank you so much for everyone who's here, and all of you all for participating and being vulnerable, sharing our old resumes and mistakes that we've made.
Thanks everybody for watching. It's we're gonna hit the ground running. Career fairs start September the 5th with CareerLink. We've got all sorts of programming already happening leading up to that. And then, all throughout the semester. Natty mentioned he and I will be doing our transferable skills workshop. I think that's at the end of September. So a lot of things are happening. So do be sure to look in Handshake. Look at our events calendar, which is also on the website. But, it's a great time to be going into Handshake, setting up your profile, getting ready for those career fairs. But as I mentioned on our last stream, on Monday, September the 8th, Handshake's actually going to be here on campus, and they're bringing a Mr. Softy truck with them. So they're going to be giving away free ice cream for anyone who's got the Handshake app, has their profile set up, and they're really encouraging people to use the social posts within Handshake to post about what they're getting real about this semester. And if you're able to show that, you'll get a free Mr. Softy and a free year of Google Gemini Pro. So you're they're really giving away the
splurging.
goods. Yeah. So do come out for that. That's going to be from 12 noon to 4 p.m. on 37th and Spruce, sort of across the street from the quad, over by the trolley station, over by our old office. So really looking forward to that. And then career fairs every week in September. Here we go, gang. It's the start of another
It's
year.
go time.
Thanks so much for joining us. And, of course, you can join Natty and I every Monday on the CS Radio podcast. That's going to be starting up again also in a few weeks, and you can get that wherever you listen to podcasts or right here on YouTube. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tina, Natty, Dustin. Have a great school year, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Welcome back.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.